All right, so here's what I want to do. I don't want to spend much time talking about how to use AI to improve your existing outbound process. I would rather talk about how the outbound process can be reimagined completely because of AI. So if you'll bear with me for this presentation, I'm going to walk through a hypothetical of what it might look like to build our outbound sequence from scratch as if we were some hypothetical company. All right, so the company we are today is Innovation Tax. Innovation Tax is a tax advisory service. They help companies that do any sort of investments in R&D, and they help them to get access to R&D tax credits, save a bunch of money. Okay, these are programs that the government offers. A lot of companies don't know about it, and some tax advisory services would specialize in this. Okay, so our job, of course, is to help them to book meetings. All right, now let's imagine that we log on to a tool like Apollo or Lucia or Claire, whatever B2B contact database you use. And we're looking at a list of about 70 million companies. That's how many companies a lot of these databases have. One of the things that we might do is we might go commission some sales development reps, some SDRs, to go out and create some lists. Okay, but this is what happens. Every SDR has their own approach, or every sales manager might give different advice. You have some overlapping within the lists, but then you end up with this challenge that is sort of a two-part problem whenever it comes to using filters within a lot of these databases. The filters can't account for everything, and so very often you end up with a lot of junk that makes it into your lists. Or you could be very exclusive with your filters, and then you risk missing out on great companies that don't exactly align with that particular filter. Okay, so there's a lot of messiness whenever it comes to filters and lists and keeping everything consistent in the list building game. All right, so here's what we're going to do since we're doing this from the ground up. We'll use filters, but we're going to use them a little bit differently. We're going to start with a set of filters that are very, very broad, very accepting. In fact, they are as broad as our targeting allows, right? So this is the baseline minimum qualification that a company needs to meet, at least the ones that we can account for in filters. Okay, so in the example of innovation tax services, we wouldn't want to work with any company that has either less than 10 million in revenue or less than a million in funding. If they have less than that, they're too small. It's not going to work. They're not going to have the money. It's not even worth it. Okay? Or let's say under 50 employees. They have to meet one of those criteria. We've got some geographic constraints, and then they have to have at least one person in some sort of technical role. Somebody on the company has to have engineer in their job title, or developer, or research, or something, some kind of keyword. Okay, so this is sort of the baseline minimum qualification criteria that we can deploy. Okay, so we run this on 70 million companies. We just pop in those filters, very easy. I'm sure a lot of you guys have done it before. And of course, it takes out 99% of them, right? We end up going from 70 million down to, let's say, 50,000. So now we've got this list of 50,000 companies, and it's not the best list, right? We were very forgiving with our filters that we used. And so there's another step that we have to take. And this is where we want to account for the qualification parameters that you can't really use filters for, right? Whether it's qualitative in nature or it's a data point that doesn't really exist in a lot of databases. Okay, and this is where AI comes in. It's going to help us to identify and remove those companies that made it through that we don't want in there. All right, so we're going to use the AI in this case to look at some qualitative parameters around each business. We want to make sure that each business creates some original technology or innovation, something that qualifies for R&D, right? If they don't really qualify for R&D, if they're not really doing anything new, it's not even worth reaching out. and roughly at least 300,000 in payroll that goes towards R&D spend. Okay, because this is what maybe justifies an engagement with innovation tax. Okay, so we're gonna infer the R&D spend, or at least how much of it is going in through payroll. All right, so we want to identify those bad fit companies. We're going to start off by putting each one of those companies, all 50,000 of them, into a list. Okay, now many of us have done these in the B2B databases. We create lists all the time. But we're going to add a column. We're going to call it prompt 1. We're going to add 2 more columns, prompt 2, and then results. And this is where we want to take advantage of those AI features within some of these databases. Apollo has a great one, Apollo Power-Ups. Apollo just also announced the AI assistant. Shameless plug, because I work very closely with Apollo and I'm very excited for this feature. So definitely check it out. It's going to help you with a lot of this prompting, list building, a lot of different AI use cases, a lot of great features that are rolling out, that have rolled out, that are coming soon. Definitely check it out. Okay, so we add these columns. They're sort of like custom fields within the database. But the fields are populated by AI, right? So for each column, we embed within that column a prompt. Okay, in this first column, we're embedding just basic research guidelines. Go to their website, look at their pages, learn stuff about them, go look at their staff structure on LinkedIn, figure out who's in what roles and whatever information you can find. Prompt 2 is just an extra layer. Analyze all of the findings in prompt 1. We spread it out because we want it to be good. Realistically, these prompts end up being long, sometimes a page or so, maybe more. I've written prompts that were 20 or 30 pages. That's a very niche use case. So when these AI columns run, they will then produce the result, which is qualified or not qualified. That's what we're looking for at the end of the day. All right. So we've got our prompts set up. We've got our 50,000 companies loaded into our database. Now we just need to run all of them through this system. So we click launch on the power up, and then it tells us which companies are qualified, which companies are not. Awesome. So now we went from 70 million to 50,000. Then we got rid of 15,000. By the way, this is a very expensive activity to do, analyzing 50,000 companies. It might cost a couple grand in AI credits. But it's not something that you're going to do very often because companies are not changing that frequently, right? So something that maybe you do as an exercise once a year and you have a fresh list of all of the companies. So if we contrast this to the normal list building process, where you have every SDR kind of throw out a dart into the market and sees where it lands, we're starting broad and then narrowing in and filtering out. So we cast a wide net and then we're very selective as we sort through everything. All right, so what's the point of all of this? We just spent $3,000 on AI credits. Now we have a giant list with all of our leads all in one place. Some of them might not be that good, even though they're qualified. Some of them might be great, but they're still all in one place. So what's the point of this? A couple different reasons you need to do this. Okay, the first one is this is going to help you determine your outreach burn rate. Okay, your burn rate is how quickly you go through your entire market when it comes to outbound. All right, so let's say we've got 15,000 accounts. All right, and let's say hypothetically we distribute them like this. All right, so we've got most of the accounts being targeted within the first 2 months. What's going to happen is we're going to get to the end of February. We're going to start planning our March outreach, and we're going to say, oh crap, we've got 1 month left, and then we're going to have to start reaching out to the same people again. We didn't have enough time to analyze our content. We didn't have enough time to analyze our strategy. We should have spread this out a little bit more. On the other side of the spectrum, when you have no visibility into your market size, you think that you're sending out a decent amount of outreach. Yeah, we send 500 emails a month. Okay, great. But your market's huge. Unless you're intentionally trying not to grow, you're leaving money on the table. All right, your market can support it. What I typically advise is a 6-month burn rate. I've heard other experts suggest 3. It's really a strategic decision. Every industry is different. Every business is different. It's a decision to be made with leadership. I typically go for 6 months. Why 6 months? Because after 6 months, your market starts to refresh itself. People are in new roles. People have forgotten about you. So you can end up being able to do evergreen outreach, right? Your outreach never has to stop, but you're also not leaving any money on the table. It just keeps going forever and ever. Okay. So we've got our 15,000 accounts, and we determined that we want to spread them out over 6 months. And that's how many companies we want to reach out to on a monthly basis. All right. So that was reason number 1. The second reason is this helps us figure out what our deliverability infrastructure is going to be. Anybody that's been in RevOps, anybody that's been in Outbound hates deliverability. It's a necessary evil. Spinning up domains and mailboxes and DNS records and figuring out how to get your emails out of spam and keep them out of spam, it's a headache. Okay, and nobody knows where to start. We kind of just pick arbitrary numbers. You know, I'm going to have 5 mailboxes and 3 domains, right? But there's not really a lot of insight into why that number, right? So if we have 15,000 accounts in our total addressable market, let's say we took a sample of that and did a quick assessment, and we found out that there's roughly 2 contacts per account on average that we can reach out to. Okay, so we've got 30,000 contacts in our account. And if we're spreading that out over 6 months because of our burn rate, then we need to be able to reach out to 5,000 people a month. Cool. Now let's say we want to be able to send 4 emails per contact on average. All right, now we know we need to send 20,000 emails a month. If we assume roughly 20 sending days in a month, let's say you want to avoid sending on weekends, then we want to be able to handle 1,000 emails a day. If we assume a maximum of 20 emails per day per mailbox, which is what I would advise, I wouldn't advise going over that, then we need 50 mailboxes. And if we assume no more than 2 mailboxes per domain, then we need 25 domains. All right, so what we've done is we literally took a list of our entire market, figured out how many people there are in it, roughly, right? This is not perfect. And then worked the math backwards to figure out exactly how many mailboxes and domains we need. Now, I wouldn't purchase exactly 50 or exactly 25 domains. I would actually increase that by about 20%. I've had clients that wanted it increased by 300% because deliverability is chaotic and the email service providers always change things up. So you have to adjust, and sometimes things go to spam. You need to rotate them out. You need buffer, basically. Okay, so that's the deliverability infrastructure. All right, so what was the point of that? Again, volume optimization, right? You're reaching out to the right amount of companies every month, and then informed infrastructure. Your infrastructure is built for to meet a certain capacity requirement, right? It's not guesswork. All right, now there's a few other things, other reasons why you might want to have your entire list in one place. This sets the stage for deeper research, for advanced scoring, and for really, really good custom messaging. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by that. If we recall, when we, earlier in this exercise, we went from the filtered list, and then we had the AI analyze each company, and then qualify or disqualify. The AI had to do some research, right? It had to go to the website. It had to roughly analyze the business model, take a look at some staff, right? It did some digging. But there's more digging that we can do. We can look deeper into the nature of their work. We can look into the likelihood that a company might need R&D coverage for tax credits. We might try to figure out exactly what innovations they have built out. All of this can inform our messaging, our scoring, and sometimes some of these data points influence both. Okay, so exact innovations. If they have some really cool innovations, I mean, hey, you can mention that in a message. And it gives you more to work off of for scoring too. All right, so each one of these data points that we think about, a couple different ways to think about them. They're questions that we can ask about a target account. Okay, that's one way to phrase it. I like the term parameter because it makes me feel smart. So I call these parameters. A parameter, again, is a question that you can ask about a target account that can influence messaging, scoring, or both. Now, in the case of innovation tax, some parameters might include the business model of the company, the product or service achievements that they've had. Have they like done cool stuff, done cool innovation? What type of innovation is it? What sort of staff titles do they have, right? Do they literally have 10 people in researcher roles? Because that would be cool. Or is it just, maybe one person in like a development role? What's like the estimated R&D staff payroll? Can we approximate that with other data points, maybe formulaically? Here's another one. Based on the details of the company, which one of our case studies makes the most sense to share with them? Which would be most relevant for them? Right? So again, different types of parameters. Some of them influence scoring, some of them influence messaging, some of them influence both. Okay, so we have our parameter table here. This is really just for organization purposes. You can almost think about it as a form, and I'll explain what I mean by that soon. But you want to document all of this stuff, right? So you write your parameters, we determine what type, we determine where the information is coming from. A lot of it is AI research. Some of it is a combination of AI and ingesting other data points already within your database. Some of it might be your first party intent data. Who's visiting your website? Who downloaded your white paper? Who filled out your lead form? Who are the most active users already on your platform on the free tier? All right, now I'm giving examples sort of beyond our hypothetical company that we're working with. All right, so we determine our information source, and then we document our prompt and our formula. In order to uncover the information that parameter is looking for, either you need a prompt to go out and collect and analyze it, or you need a formula to crunch the numbers, or some combination. It might be a chain of multiple prompts, but this is where you document all of that. For the sake of simplicity, I'm just assuming one prompt can handle each one of these parameters. Then if it's a scoring parameter, you determine what the weight is, right? So let's say business model. Let's say we use that for scoring. And so the AI has to determine a score between 1 and 100. But like, how does that parameter influence the final score? Is it just a small part of it? Doesn't really matter that much? Or is it like the big thing? Right? And then guidelines. So let's say, for example, we're looking at the parameter best reference case study. So we want the AI to analyze the company and output the details of the case study we have that we should share with that company and why that case study is a good case study to share. All right. So we fill all this information out. The system, again, will output the score and the messaging guidelines. Right? Every company that goes through this will be assigned a score, and there will be messaging guidelines generated across multiple parameters. All right, so let's take a step back here. We've got our parameter table, and then we've got our account list, our original account list. The 15,000 accounts are right here. Okay. So how do we use this? Like, what do we do with this? Well, each one of these parameters ends up being a set of columns on the account list. So that's worth repeating. On the parameter table, a parameter is represented as a row. You migrate that to your account list and you represent it as a column. These are those power-ups, those AI power-ups. Okay? So we do that here for the business model. We do that for the product service achievements. That one covers, again, if you remember, it was both a scoring parameter and a messaging parameter. So we have the column where all the AI is sort of doing its thing and it's doing the research and all that. And then this is where it assigns the score. And then this is where it assigns the messaging guidelines and output. All of the scoring for each account, again, since they're assigned multiple scores, sub-scores, all of the scores come together for the final account score. All of the messaging guidelines come together to create a set of guidelines when messaging that account. Mention this, don't mention that, make sure to highlight this, emphasize this value prop, de-emphasize that value prop, whatever it might be. All right. Now, these messaging guidelines get inserted into your copywriting prompt. Okay. So we have our copywriting prompt and we've got these variables in there. Before the prompt runs, this is all filled out with the output of the messaging guidelines. So the messaging guidelines are thrown into this prompt before it runs to generate the copy. This is some of the most informed copy that you are ever going to generate. Deeply researched, deeply relevant, and looking at multiple parameters to find the most relevant points of personalization and customization. I don't like that word personalization. I prefer customization. Personalization has some bad connotations. I just think of people on LinkedIn doing some shallow stuff, but this is real deep relevance. All right, so let's run through an example. Again, reminder, our company that we're working with is Innovation Tax, and they are now looking at one particular account in their account list, Red Fox Software. All right, so we see Red Fox Software, cool, 75 employees. Seems like it's a software company, nothing crazy. We've got some data already in here from our qualification run. We've got a little bit of context from the research findings of qualification. Again, we want to go a little bit deeper into that. All right, so the next step is to add the business model column group. So this is where we have that that power up column. Now, within this column, there is embedded a prompt. This is the prompt that analyzes the business model of the company, right? So we write this prompt. This prompt lives within this set of columns, right? This prompt is associated with this set of columns. Okay, so that when Red Fox Software is added to this list, the data we already have, the website, the company, the previous research, or any other context, triggers the power up to run. The prompt enters that information and then runs with that information and produces the output. In this case, the output is an assessment of the business model and an associated score for that column group. So this says score 82. This is really the business model alignment score. Okay. So we can see here, Red Fox Software is a custom development firm based in Kansas. Staff includes 45 engineers, recently branched into creating and marketing their own software, suggesting a presence of R&D within the organization, yada, yada, yada. It's aligned. Cool. So we continue to do that with the other parameters, product and service achievements. All right, they were on the news for their energy efficiency software for commercial buildings. Awesome. That's great talking point. Score of 94 for product and service achievements? And what are our associated messaging guidelines? Red Fox was featured in the local news for the growth of their custom software. They're clearly creating innovations that can have far-reaching impacts. Acknowledge this accomplishment without too much flattery. So similarly, there is a prompt that informs how all of this content is generated and how the research behind it is done. All right. Let's look at one more example. Staff involvement. Based on their staff roster, it seems John D. and Andrew S. are the innovators leading the charge. They're both engineers, and their LinkedIn accounts suggest heavy involvement in Red Fox's custom software. Call out the fact that John D. and Andrew are working diligently on creating innovative software. Imply that their work can contribute to tax savings through R&D tax credits. Cool. So we've got all this great information. We've got multiple scores or sub-scores that we can use to create our final score. We've got our messaging guidelines. Then we can take these messaging guidelines and we can throw them into our copywriting prompt. And then when that prompt runs, it will produce our custom outreach. Hey, Mary. Looks like Adam, Andrew, and team have been busy building some powerful sustainability tools. Saw the Channel 13 profile. Did you know you could get some large tax credits for that R&D work? TPC is another dev agency that we helped to save $250,000 on their taxes last year. Happy to send over that case study, unless you'd prefer to chat over a call. Whatever your copywriting style or voice or tone, you embed it, of course, within the copywriting prompt. But think about that deep customization that you can pull off. So this is what your content can look like for every company that you reach out to. Every company has their own message. All right. So bit of a complete pivot here. What is the role of humans within this entire process? Because they're not building lists anymore. They're not necessarily writing copy anymore. Well, they definitely have to work on the sort of meta system itself, designing the prompts, determining the thresholds, scoring criteria, what parameters should we have, how should they be weighed against each other. But all of that is sort of management and above, right? But what about SDRs? So my prediction is the SDR job is going to shift into a AI and data annotation role. Okay. So if you can imagine, just close your eyes and imagine your giant list with 15,000 accounts. All of it is enriched. We've got all this research. We've got these messaging guidelines, all this great stuff generated by our prompts. Awesome. Well, somebody's got to review that to make sure that stuff is good. AI hallucinates. Maybe the research guidelines weren't that good and needed to be improved. Maybe the research was fine, but the analysis of the findings wasn't, right? You need humans to be able to monitor that and provide feedback into the system. And that feedback does two things. The first thing that it does is it influences the scoring and messaging for that particular account that the SDR is working on. Okay, so if there's an account and it shows some research and it's like, yeah, this is all the stuff they're doing in R&D, and it's like nothing. And then the final score is like super high. You know, the SDR might flag that and say, hey, this isn't right. Okay, so they have a human input box that they fill out in that table. And they say, this should really be 20 points. It shouldn't be 50 points. Okay, so immediately that account is going to adjust. It's going to get deprioritized. But also, let's say once a month you go through, you grab all of the feedback that your reps have left, all of the feedback related to targeting and scoring, and you use that to refine your targeting and scoring prompts. All of the feedback they put into messaging, you use that to refine and improve your messaging prompts. Okay. Um, and then cold calling. um, unless you're into the whole auto dialer thing, I don't know about that, but um, you can have reps cold call. And so I almost envision the SDR process sort of shifting into like an orchestrator. Um, SDRs can be less focused about like the sales skills and the sales expertise and all of that. And like, yeah, you want them to have some copywriting skills, but they could be subject matter experts that are just pouring their subject matter expertise into a spreadsheet, right? Hopefully through a nicer interface. Apollo can help you do that, by the way, with workflows, with custom lists, custom views, a lot of cool stuff you can do. But they pour their expertise and their knowledge into this data set, and it refines the whole system. Okay, so what we're talking about is a comprehensive system. It accounts for your entire market. It scores everything. It surfaces the best of them to the top. It researches everything that you might want to know about them. It brings that all together to score and prioritize and to create really solid messaging. And then you send it out in a system that puts people in their most valuable position. So that is what outbound can look like if we stop asking, how can I use AI to improve my system? And start asking, what should my system even look like now that AI is a thing? What would it mean for it to be truly AI native?